Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Leslie, and you might know me as Original Book Nerd. Today, I am joined with Claudia, who writes under Steele Amari and Becca Steele, and we are going to be talking about their co-write Blackwell Lake, which is a series. It's a dark, why choose college romance. I would say they do the suspense stuff well in this book. And book one is called Beneath the Surface, so we'll start there. And this first question is for both of you guys. And I was curious, between Ava, Grayson, Micah, and Cruz, who was your favorite character writing?
Oh, that was a hard one.
My favorite on this one is Micah. Although
Yeah,
Cruz is a close second, but I think I love the dynamic he has with like everyone.
yeah, same. I think I really like Grayson because he's kind of like just a bit like he's just this hockey captain and he's all been like, typical hockey boy kind of thing. And then he's just like thrown into this whole new situation and he's suddenly finding himself like, am I attracted to these other random people? And he's just like a bit confused about everything and he's still trying to be a leader and and he's just trying to find his way. It's quite interesting to write, like just to see how he's dealing with it all.
I I agree with Becca. Grayson was my favorite because, you don't expect it from a hockey captain, the way he kind of grows in this book,
Yeah,
albeit sometimes not the way he wants to grow.
Mhm.
yeah,
I
it's all
enjoyed the
very
dynamic
confusing.
between him and Micah and him and Ava,
Yeah,
and kind of him and Cruz at this point.
Enemies to lovers
I
moment.
love. Yeah, we are loving their dynamics at the moment. It's very interesting.
So this is not the first time you guys have written together, but when you guys do write together, how do you tackle breaking up like who writes what or like the flow and ebb of writing a story as two different authors?
I think what has helped is that we've known each other since before we have published. And early on, we like beta each other's stuff. So we understand each other's like writing voice. So
Yeah,
that makes it easier. And then we just kind of divide. It's a lot of characters, especially when you're having sex scenes. You're like, we have to make sure we don't end up with an extra butt or something in there. So we'll just divide, like, you do this, I do that. And then we'll leave each other like comments like, oh, like if you think this works better, like fill it in and stuff like that.
yeah. In a
And
way, it's kind of good that we're on two different time zones. So like Claudia will write something while I'm asleep, and then I can wake up, read it through, write my chapter, and then she can read hers while I'm doing other things. So it's kind of works out quite well in a way, like being 6 hours apart. Weirdly enough.
so for Blackwell Lake, how did you guys come up together with this idea of this college that kind of has this eerie, suspenseful feeling and this group of characters that if you laid them out together, you wouldn't think they would mesh?
No.
I'm pretty sure we came up with the idea at the spirit store. It was when she came to visit Chicago, and it was like late September. So I was like, oh, let's go to the Halloween store. And we were putting on all this like crazy masks on. We still have pictures. At the time, we were trying to make it like a football romance. And we had like all
Yeah.
this props and pictures, but then as we developed the story, it changed.
So for you in Chicago, hockey wouldn't be that different of a sport because in America, hockey's really big. But Becca, across the ocean, hockey's not quite as big in the UK and in Europe. So
No.
was it hard writing a hockey romance for you, or did you have to put more research into kind of
Yeah,
understand?
I did have to do a lot of research. I luckily that there is a team that's about 40 minutes drive away from me. So I've been to like a few games and kind of, got a feel for actually being in the crowd, like at a live game, which has really been like probably the most useful thing, I think. And then obviously I've watched like so many YouTube videos and games on TV and read Hockey for Dummies book, which, to make sure I'm putting things in the right terminology and everything. But yeah, it's been really interesting. I really love watching it, so it's been fun to write it.
So do you guys have a favorite position in hockey now that you have Grayson's character under your belt?
I don't think so. I don't have a favorite. I could
I
never pick.
watch it like when there's like, when the Stanley Cup. Other than that, I'm not big on sports. Like, I understand terminologies here or there.
So, was there any inspiration behind that, like the Black Hole Lake aspect? And, we all know the scene that kind of kicks off this mystery and suspense in the book without spoiling it for anyone who hasn't read. That kind of also ties all of four of them together against their will.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I think were you watching a lot of like those '90s like horror? Like
yeah,
I know what you did last summer, and then I also watched some, and we were just like, "This is the vibe."
yeah. That was kind of the feel we wanted kind of to get from it, with those 90s, early 2000s like teen horror movie type things
Yeah, like the
with
teen
romance, of
angst
course.
and the mystery.
So you guys have talked about your favorite characters, and they both happen to be the guys. But Ava in this book, I actually had someone who read this, and they asked me this question when I said I was going to interview you guys. They wanted to know if Ava had any inspiration in your personal lives for her story, or how you kind of came about with just her character journey in this first book. Because she starts out a little shy and not necessarily innocent, but not quite as in your face as some of your previous female main characters that you guys have written.
Yeah, I think we wanted, because obviously she's this like sorority girl, but we didn't want her to be like the typical one. So I think we wanted to kind of get that more vulnerable side to her and the shyness and stuff, which you might not necessarily expect from that kind of typical, like sorority person.
Yeah, I think we'll see a lot of more growth in her in this second book.
Mm,
It'll explore. Definitely, you'll see a
yeah,
lot of growth from like all of them, but her too, like coming into her own, and because her main thing, she didn't want to step on like Livy, but then we go into book two, and then things change, so she kind of has to be
yeah.
forced to come into her own, despite if she doesn't want to step on toes.
Which for her is probably a pivotal moment in her character because
Mm,
she is a little bit quieter in the way she went about her growth in this book, whereas Grayson and Micah and even Cruz are kind of more in your face.
Mm,
They're
yeah,
more argumentative.
yes.
Cruz is more of a, excuse my French, but like a shit stir.
yeah.
He totally is.
His first chapter cracked me up when we got to it. I was like, I know it's coming. And he inserts himself in the group in like the most like inconspicuous but like the most obvious way as well. And they're just like, why are you here? And he's like, why do you think?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
So I do want to ask some about book two based off how we ended book one. And the first one is when you chose to end book one, where you chose to end it, because it's a very reminiscent of anyone who's read your last, I think it was your last co-write, unless I've missed one, The Boneyard Kings,
Mm,
or okay, I wanted to make sure I kind of reminded me how you kind of ended the first book there, where you're like, that's where they're gonna leave us. Like,
Yeah,
but are we gonna pick up in at the culmination of a book one event, starting book two, or are we gonna have a time jump between the two books?
no, it picks right up.
yeah.
Cool.
There's just like a tiny little gap, but that's it. Like you'll go
Like it's very
straight into
minimal.
the
Yeah.
continuation. Yeah,
So you're
Yeah.
yeah. Start it with a bang. That's what we want to do.
Yeah.
will book two be just as suspenseful, or are we kind of racketing up like the darkness and this like the mystery surrounding everything still?
I think the suspense theme is gonna carry on till like
Yeah,
book three.
but
And
we'll
this
be
is going
we'll be finding
forward.
out more kind of
More.
little breadcrumbs and hints about what's happening, and yeah, the mystery side will play a big part in book two.
So I'm not going to be able to calm my heart until I get that final book.
Yeah.
Can you, I don't want to ask, but can you tell me if I'm going to hate any of the main four at the end of this second book?
I think so.
No, I don't think so. I
I
hope
don't
not.
know, but I don't. So far, I don't think so.
Okay, I'll be able to do it then. Talking about the way you ended book one, without going into a lot of details for someone who hasn't read it, you build up the suspense in a way, alternating between the points of view where if you pay really close attention, you can pick Easter eggs. And you
Mhm.
can kind of maybe start to guess some things that are happening, but
Yeah.
have we kind of met that overall like villain character yet? Or is he still or she still a mystery at this?
Wow. I don't know if we can say, really, can we?
No, that is a good question. That is a good question.
So I guess that's undecided.
It's undecided.
We might have, we might not.
I'm like going back in my head and trying to remember all the books I've read between you guys and like trying to picture when we got villains. I feel like the first villain I ever met from Becca was Winter's mom.
Oh,
We didn't like
I
her.
don't think we met her. I think I just heard about her the first couple of books and we met her later
yeah,
on. But man, she's
It's a good villain.
a good villain. Kind of inconspicuous because she put everyone else in the roles to
yeah,
actually fit, and she was just kind of like plucking the strings.
yeah.
For those people who may not read darker romance, how would you guys rate this book in terms of darkness scale?
Almost so far, I don't think we have dived in.
Yeah, I would say probably similar to the Blackwell Lake series. Do you reckon? Maybe.
Maybe I worded that wrong. For the
Like,
Blackwell Lake series,
I
how would
mean,
you
the
rate?
Boneyard Kings.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
like
I
similar
literally
level
said
as
all
Boneyard
those.
Kings. Yeah, like
Yeah,
not. I wouldn't say it was like dark. It's
So
not like
kind
we're
of,
not getting like super descriptive, like
yeah,
really dark
exactly.
kind of. Like dark things might happen, but we're not going to be kind of, really getting into the goriness.
I think I would say they're like
Making it.
just grittier, not dark, like grittier. Would that be
Yeah.
the word?
it's more kind
Right.
of raw angst with a
Yeah.
dash of mystery, or maybe a lot of mystery with a dash of raw angst.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Especially with the Micah and Grayson dynamic, which
Hmm.
kind of leads to my next few questions. Micah and Grayson are kind of the pairing that would shock you, but not shock you. They don't seem, when you meet both of them in their own first points of view chapters, that they would mesh well together. Um,
Hmm.
until you get to the points where you realize Grayson's seen and been aware of Micah a lot longer than Micah knew. And in terms of the dynamic between this Why Choose Romance, when you were kind of developing Grayson and Micah's stories, did you always kind of know in this book it was gonna, because I felt like their bond was one that kind of was more of a focus in this book. I mean, they all like Ava, but Grayson and Micah had more contention at first, partly because of, Grayson's hockey and some of the
Yeah.
teasing and not so nice jokes that the team played on Micah, but also Grayson kind of becomes a protector in a loose sense of
Yeah.
the word book. Not fully in, but he starts to dip his toes in. So I was curious if that was kind of always how you saw their dynamic going in this book, or if it was a shock to you guys as well.
To me, it was a shock because we started off with their basic like idea of like how they are, but as we start writing them, we were like shocked. We're like, oh my god, they just did this, or they like
Yeah.
this. And we get shocked as we write. So they get the more we write it, the more developed they start getting it, and we
Yeah.
just
They
have
take on a life of their own.
alone. Yeah, so we start off with like a shell that we know what they're like, but then as we write, it just becomes to mold so perfectly.
Hmm.
So this might be a fun one for you guys. So this group has you represented the blonde and the dark hair well in their group. But when you guys read, are you readers who enjoy more of like the dark hair, dark eyes in a male character, or like the blonde haired, blue eyed, kind of angelic with a dark side type of male main character?
I always
Dark
like a
hair.
dark hair and like green eyes. That's like my thing. And a tragic backstory.
I can't say anything because I like the dark hair and blue eyes. Every
Yeah.
time someone, should I do it? I'm like, well, you shouldn't ask me if you want variety, unless it's fantasy. I like
I
this
love reading fanfic.
Yeah.
Then give me white hair.
For white hair, what for elves?
That is true.
like white hair, like silver fox white hair or like fantasy white?
Fantasy white hair.
Okay.
Fantasy. In fantasy, that's good.
In fantasy, yeah.
Yeah.
In fantasy, I do like white hair.
Yeah.
It doesn't really translate well when I'm, ooh, white hair. He's old.
No, you never know. We might end up writing a fantasy RH. So
That would be fun. There's very, very many avenues you guys can go down in that
yeah.
fantasy. Have either of you, I don't think either of you have tackled fantasy in the past. No.
No, we
Okay.
both read a lot of fantasy, don't we? But we've
Yeah.
always said that's something we would like to write. It's just such a big kind of daunting task, like doing all the world building and everything, you know. It's like a big project. But we would love to do it.
If you guys went into a fantasy, would it be more like modern fantasy or like really into like different world?
No, I think a little bit of both would be interesting.
Yeah. I like to do both.
I read all fantasies, so I'm never going to turn down a new fantasy book. I read them all, much to everyone's disappointment when I'm like, I just have so many on my list. I'll get
Yeah. Sounds like me.
But I mean, it's a great pastime.
Mhm.
But back to the Blackwell Lake. This is a cruise question, and you may not be able to quite answer it all the way, but Cruz comes from a very different type of background than the other three, being kind of more rough around the edges, not quite in the same group socially as Ava and Micah and even Grayson, because, you know, they're kind of more up into the sports and the college social scenes. But I would say I thought he fit in like he should have always been there. The question is, though, will Cruz have more layers that we unpack? Because I felt like he's still hiding quite a bit when we ended this book about certain things that I cannot even guess about because I don't know how I'm feeling at the end of book one.
I think in this book, we're really going to peel back for all of them. Like you said, the first book focused a little bit more on Micah and Grayson, which if you notice in the cover, it has a camera and the hockey. So it's kind of like hinted. So we're trying to do like a little bit of everybody. So we'll see more of him, more of Ava, and more of like Grayson. You'll peel back a lot more on everybody.
Great. So does that mean there's possibly another pairing coming through the work with
Be
Grayson?
a bit of enemies to lovers, you never know.
I'll just say this book is a lot spicier than the last book.
Yeah.
I'll take it. I was like, that is the one thing I don't like in a way because sometimes people want to be surprised by the pairings in it. So I'm like trying to think in my head, like, how can I word some of these questions without like, kind of putting you guys into a corner to answer it and give it away? And this is a why choose. So on the topic of being spicier and having a more heat coming up in book two, I always want to know when you guys plan why choose and reverse harem as authors? How do you decide where everyone is going to go in these spicier scenes? And like making sure that like you know, like you said, you don't have an extra foot or like there's not like an extra like hand just some grabbing somewhere.
Last series we had stick figure drawings.
We did, yeah. We used them a lot.
We're just like this is what we want. We have a general idea and we'll start writing it, and then sometimes I'm like, okay, the scene ended from my point of view. I'm like, here you go. And then she'll read what I wrote and she'll continue it, and it just flows.
Yeah.
So when you do them, you guys are kind of meshing both of your writings. It's not like someone's writing one scene and someone's writing the other. It's kind of like you're like ebbing and flowing through the scene.
We'll finish like a whole chapter, and then she'll like if it doesn't end where I want to, she'll pick it up and finish or continue it.
Yeah, and we'll like leave spaces for like the other person to maybe fill in dialogue, or if we're like, I don't know what to put on this bit, like, do you have any ideas, kind of thing. So it'll end up being kind of a collaborative work.
So yeah, I think we flow well together.
Yeah.
So that being said, did any of these characters surprise you with their bedroom talk and dirty talk in this book? Because I can think of one when he started talking, I was like, I did not expect that
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah, they definitely surprise us.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember if any of these characters have tattoos or piercings. But when you do these scenes, has there ever been an instance where like an extra piercing or a different, like a new tattoo appears and then you're like, now we have to go back and like have this in character profile or like hers so that way it's through the rest of the book?
I don't know with this book, but I've had it happen with other books where I'm just like, oh my God, they have
Yeah.
this, and I have to go like back and like fill it in.
That's amazing. I've always
Yeah.
wondered that because everyone's like, and I'm like, I feel like some of these tattoos are so distinctive, like, and you don't know until you get to the part where it shows.
Yeah.
So then you have to remember. So it sounds like you guys are more not quite pantsers, but kind of not strict plotters.
Hmm.
When you go into these books like this and you kind of have a loose base, do you keep it loose enough to where as things change, you can go back and kind of evolve the original idea? Or do you try to keep in line with what you kind of saw these characters as from the beginning?
I think we have an idea, but if it doesn't fit that idea anymore, once we start writing and it takes a life and we're like, that's what they wanted, that's what we're doing.
Yeah. We're just kind of always adapting it basically as we're writing.
Yeah.
It's like it's changing all the time.
Yeah, I think that's why we work so well together, because I have other friends that are like, they're so like strict on plotting and they follow, and then we're just kind of like go with the flow.
Yeah.
That being said, how did you come up with the names of Ava and Micah, Grayson, and Cruz? Because their names fit their identities. Did their name evolve before their character, or did you kind of have their character idea and then choose names that fit who you guys saw as their person identity?
Yeah, I think we picked their characters, didn't we? And then we were like, we just listed names that we thought might
Names, yeah.
work, and then just went through and we were like, yes, that's the one, that's the one for that
Mhm.
character, that's the one for that character.
Yeah, we had like
Yeah,
a whole list of names, and then like,
a long list.
yeah,
Yeah.
when we were plotting, we were just throwing names. I was like, ooh, I was like, I like how that sounds.
Was it the same for Blackwell Lake? Because I have been dying to know why you decided to name the lake Blackwell Lake and just kind of keep that eerie suspenseful feel with the way you did like the college and like the scenery around it. Because to me, it just kind of looks like, a gothic lake that I would probably steer very clear of.
You would not be going to the end of the year parties.
Yeah.
Not if it's there.
No.
But it was kind of the same process where you had names and you're like, I think this one fits the picture that I have in my head.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, we were like, we need something cool, eerie.
Yeah, and
And
I'd been to a lake and it was like a slate mine, and there was a lake there, and the water was just black, and I was like, this is what I have in my head. I'm like, we have to have black in the title. Plus, we had Blackstone for our previous series of the town, which in our heads is kind of close by. Yeah, so we wanted to kind of carry on that same theme.
Yeah, she was like, this was like, let's do it.
Yeah,
and of
because
course,
it's all like the black slate kind of stone around them and stuff. So
well, you guys described this lake to really kind of show the suspense. And the first kind of event meeting we get on this lake as well has probably the most significant part to the book because of what happens when the characters are on this party boat and
yeah.
everything goes down. Without giving it away to someone who hasn't read, what made you decide that was going to be how the events unfolded with what they witness and those eerie text messages and the almost like, not a stalker vibe, but like someone has eyes on them everywhere? Like, what made you decide this is the route we're going to go instead of like having it kind of not be quite as "Oh, this is happening with what they witness on the lake"?
I don't know, I think it was over breakfast like 4 years ago
Yeah.
or something. We had a loose idea. And then when we got to writing it, we were like, oh, it should be like there. We had an idea. So when we wrote that scene, we just kind of let it go to see how it flowed. And things changed from what we originally wanted, but we're like, we'll make this work. It's just how
Hmm.
how it came about. We write and we adapt.
Yeah.
So before we got on, I was like looking through some of the reviews and like I went through my review again to like refresh my memory on certain things and like places in the book. And there was this one comment and I like pulled out one-liners that I found funny, but this one made me laugh and it was about Cruz and the person in the review was like, I feel like they're gonna spin this on us, and Cruz is gonna end up being the one behind everything. Because there's just something about that man, and I was like, I don't know if I can read this conspiracy theory. I don't know if I like this. I was like, this is making me think everything, you know. But I did have that thought, and I was like, I found it hilarious because when we first met him, I was like, how funny would it be if he's actually the one behind all of this? And he wasn't watching, but he was the one who, like, you know, set those events in motion. And then I was like, I don't know if I want that to happen either once we got to know him more. But I did have a question about so when you introduced Cruz, everyone has that suspicion that, you know, maybe he's not who he's saying. Did you kind of always want that suspicion and kind of air of mystery surrounding his character as he gets added into their kind of like loose friendship forming group?
I think it's with him because he wasn't part of their crowd. He's not part of like the sports world or like into frats or anything like that. So they don't know him or trust him. Whereas they don't might not know each other that well. They've been around each other, so there's a little bit more familiarity with them than there is with Who's he right now? Like they're scared, and he's like the variable that doesn't make sense to them. So I
Yeah,
feel
and
like
there's
that.
been like rumors about him, wasn't there, and stuff. So they're all a bit like he seems a little bit suspicious, kind of thing. He's like the bad boy, like all these kind of like rumors surrounding him and stuff.
I also saw one where someone was like, maybe Micah is going to end up knowing more than he lets on. And I think that might have been because, you know, Micah always has his camera and I think they're traveling down the lines of he's probably, you know, photographed or taken like a video or something, not realizing like, you know, it's that tiny corner in the frame. And I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't know. Because like a little innocent lamb, I don't want him to be a villain. Like, as much as everyone always likes to say in like books like this where the girl almost seems more like sheltered, I don't think Ava's gonna end up being the sheltered one.
no,
No, I was
no.
about to say, based off books I've read of between you two, we might get a little naive, a little innocent, a little like doesn't want to step on toes, but I was like, I don't think Ava's gonna be the shelter. I think she might just have a little bit longer of a fuse before she goes like all out.
Yeah.
And it's getting there at the end of book one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think book one has a lot of and like everybody's biased because they don't trust each other yet, even though they know each other. So there's a lot of bias from each character. I don't want to say an unreliable narrator, but everybody's talking from their own point of view. So from everybody's point of view, you kind of have to figure out what's the truth and what is like their bias going in.
And so with that, how did you guys kind of balance the act of, you know, staying true to how each character had their very strong opinions about some of the people coming in their group? Micah not wanting to accept Grayson because, you know, he saw how Grayson looked at Ava. Ava not wanting to really accept Grayson at first because he's attached to the hockey team and she sees how they treat Micah. No one wanting to be friends with Cruz because Cruz just is an anomaly. He doesn't belong with them. And then later on, Micah and Grayson kind of having their own mutual, like, almost trust and almost respect for each other, but also not quite out in the public yet of everything that's been changing between them. But, you know, they also have these eerie text messages and the stress compiling of like every wrong turn might, you know, have this house of cards fall down on us.
Hmm.
So, like, how did you guys balance that without giving too much away as well? Because there's no way one of them hasn't seen something that, you know, is important, but maybe they haven't pieced it together yet.
Way to go. Way to go. I think it's been interesting because we kind of like we let them do like where they're going, and we just kind of I don't want to give too much. We find it fun like the more they don't like each other to get them to a point where they'll get to trust one another. So it's been interesting to have like all these dynamics, because with like Micah and Ava, they were friends, but they had that long period of time they didn't talk. So I feel like with the angst are high with the text messages and everything that's happening, they're kind of being quarreled together. So it just makes for an interesting situation and things that wouldn't normally develop to start happening.
I am going to pivot a little. I have some questions people wanted answered about your books and kind of how you guys co-write and everything. And then I also have some towards the end about book 2, if we can talk about them. But as far as questions not necessarily Blackwell Lake related, I did have someone want to know if this series will ever interconnect with any of your other series, or if it's tied at all to any of your other books.
It's already interconnected. You guys missed the Easter eggs?
I feel like I didn't miss them, but I don't want to be wrong, so I don't want to say them in case I'm not reading. But that was one that actually a lot of people, and I don't know if they missed it or if whoever wanted to know just hasn't read.
Boneyard Kings.
Yeah, that's the one I thought was connected to. I was like, I feel like I recognize some of this, and then I was like, but I don't know. And then I was like, I really want to see, like, I love Boneyard Kings, but then I was like, I really want to see Winter. I just love Winter, and there was another character that I was like, I feel like she would fit in too, and it was one of yours, Claudia. And now I can't remember the character I was thinking of when I read the book the first time. But I was like, I wonder if these three like teamed up together. And oh, I feel like that would just end with everything burning down.
Yeah, like in
Especially,
our heads, they're all in the same word, basically. So, you know.
so with Boneyard Kings, will we see more of those Easter eggs throughout this series, or has it been kind of tied in as much as it's going to be tied in?
There might be more Easter eggs, but so far we want this to be like an independent world. To not try to go back too much to them.
This one is a Becca question, and I'm sure you get this question so many times, but someone wants to know if you will ever write second generation books for the four, specifically because Caden and Winter deserve to have karma reversed on them with their child.
They do really, don't they? Yeah, I mean, I would like to. At the moment, because I'm still want to write a spin-off series for them, so, well, not for them, for the side characters, that they will also appear in. I want to, like, do that before I think about any second generation stuff. Because the series that I'm planning is kind of carrying on from the 4 series when they're still, like, well, they're finished university, they're just kind of, like, starting their working life. So, yeah, that needs to happen first.
Yeah, I think they also left a comment because I know who this person is, and they text me the question, and they're like, specifically because I really want Zayd and Weston just to nag on Caden about it. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
it would be hilarious. I mean, it has to happen.
I mean, I will ask. That's all I say all the time. And I'm like, I wouldn't deny it either, but I'm also like, I'm sure she's drowning in people wanting that in this
Yeah,
year of second generation series that have come out.
yeah.
This one is for you, Claudia, and I think it has to do with the book about to come out.
Okay.
It was someone newer to dark romance, and they were wanting to know if they're newer to dark romance, how much of like a bullying theme and bullying aspect of this coupling they should be aware of, or if it has it at all.
Oh, it does. It's not dark. It's just angsty. Yeah. So this is for like a shared world. I don't. No, it's not dark.
Okay. I don't think it is, but I was like, I also don't want to like say it because I feel like sometimes my view of dark books is not quite
Yeah.
same.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, this one's
Um,
not dark.
and this one is for both of you. You might find it funny. This is a Boneyard Kings question. And they wanted you to know, it starts with a one-liner. They said, when I started this series, one, I thought it was going to be a spin-off series where we finally get Winter's best friend. And they said, and then I realized it wasn't her story, but I just felt like it was her spirit female the whole time I read that. And I was like, I I agree. But their question is when you guys wrote that series together, how much fun did you have creating this female who just kind of came in and was like, yeah, you guys are kings, but actually I'm gonna be the one that calls all the shots because she is very much her own person from the beginning.
Yeah, we had so much fun with that, didn't we? I mean, it was our
Yeah.
first experience of writing RH together
Yeah.
anyway, or just at all. So it was really exciting just getting to have her dynamic with three different guys.
Other guys.
Like, yeah, like keeping them in their place.
Does.
Yeah, we had great fun writing it.
And was there any inspiration behind the Boneyard Kings title? Because to me, them just like the title of the series and the books kind of set up the feeling I had with these characters. I was like, this is going to be kind of gritty. It's going to be grungy. She's going to come in like, this is my show, and you guys are just, my pawns in the game. And I was like, I'm there for it. I was there for it.
I think well, we did come up with like what we wanted, and then we were like, oh, like talking about like their home life and everything, like a little bit of their backstory. And then Beck was like, oh, she's like a graveyard, like a car graveyard. I was like, yeah, like because I was trying to explain what like it looked like, sending you a picture, right? And then she was like, oh, a
Yeah.
graveyard. I was like, and then from there, it's kind of spin.
This one is one question, but you guys can both answer it. It's do you guys, when you write, do you prefer writing darker romance or do you just kind of write whatever you're in the mood to write when it hits?
I'll go first if you want. I alternate between dark romance and small town romance. That's like what I do. And sometimes I'll do like a little something that's in between, like a little bit more greedier, but either I'll do something really dark or some small town to like balance it out. And then our RH is like a mix of like, it's not, well, to me, well, compared to what I write by myself, it's not dark. Dark, I go crazy there. And over here, I'm like, yeah, they're not used to this from both of us. So we kind of just tease a little bit.
Yeah, same. I mean, I like to write whatever the mood takes me, really. Right all over the place. Dark and contemporary. Just, yeah, love it all.
Have you guys ever written a trope that has just kind of been your favorite trope to dive into and put your spin on?
Oh, I mean, mine's enemies to lovers. I mean, I have quite a few enemies to lovers books, so you could kind of say that's my favorite. Yeah.
Reverse. Even the ones that are not quite true enemies still have a enemies
Everly?
vibes.
Yeah.
Do you have one, Claudia?
I always end up doing second chances. Like that's the one I always go back to. Half of them are like more than half of them are second chance romance.
That's another good one.
And I think for my darker ones, they always have like some enemies to lover vibes, but never like exact. But it's there.
Is it the same when you guys read? Do you gravitate more towards kind of like the darker contemporary or like small
Read
town?
everything, but I do. Yeah, if it says it's enemies to lovers, I'll probably read it.
Yeah, I like reading really dark things, or I read a lot of fanfic right now, so I'll gravitate to the dark stuff, like break my heart, that dope. Like I just want to feel something.
I'm not sure if you guys will be able to answer this next question. It is about book 2, Preface. I'm pretty sure the answer is going to be we cannot answer it yet. But they want to know, and I know this is someone I know in real life who reads your books, and I told her that I'm probably not going to get an answer. She said, I want to know if I'm ever going to see in this series Greyson, Micah, and Cruz in a spicy scene where Ava is not present.
Ooh, that's a good question. About that question,
Wow. I don't know if we can say. That would be.
gotta wait for book 2 to come out.
And if you haven't noticed, she dropped a lot of MM questions. She's a very big MM reader. And I was like, why don't you just read other? I was like, I don't know if they can answer this yet. She also was curious if we're ever going to really see if Grayson is a true top or a true bottom.
He's got to figure that out for himself.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
at the moment, he's not even sure if he's attracted to men, so let's give him a minute to work it all out.
Can you tell the way she wants Grayson to go?
I love their. I'm just gonna say their dynamic right now because you have Micah and Grayson who just never really thought about being like gay or bisexual, and then you have Cruz here waltzing in like I'm bi.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Cruz just doesn't care. He's like, I love
She would
everyone.
very Well, her one-liner, because I tried to find one-liners, and her one-liner was, I really just want to hug Grayson, shake Grayson, and then also hang him off a balcony by his shoe all at once, every page, every scene, up until the end. And I was like, I feel like that's all of us right now.
Yeah, that's true.
I feel like
Absolutely.
that's quite a range, but if you haven't noticed, she very much wants to see Micah and Grayson, or all three of them. She very much has her opinions on how Grayson should evolve in this story. And she read it with me and she cracked me up our reading. And I also told her she wanted to also know this is her last one, but Cruz is kind of a question mark. We don't quite know, like, is he attracted only to Ava, or if he's kind of just attracted to who he's attracted to and he doesn't kind of specify in full detail. But she was curious about if we're going to see ever him become a little bit softer. I don't like using the word softer, but I guess if we'll kind of see him be soft towards, the group and not kind of his instigating douchebaggy self.
I think with him, when the development happens, because they all, at least, even though they come from like broken homes or one, like just with one parent, he had no parents. So he's been lacking more love, and he's looking where he
Yeah.
fits. So I feel like he puts on more of a shell because he's always had to be strong. And I think he goes into a little bit more detail early on in the next book. But yeah, so we will get to see more of him and his
Yeah.
character developing, same as with everybody else, because they're all looking to belong in a way.
And that's the perfect segue into my last couple questions about book one. So, like you said, each of them kind of have a broken past or like kind of traumas in their own history. Do you guys feel like one has a more broken or more traumatic past than the rest? Or are they all going to have their own aspects that kind of bring them closer together as we go through books 2 and 3?
I think,
I'm like, Rebecca, I'm like, you want to answer this
yeah,
one?
I think Cruz and Micah have kind of got like the most sort of stress to deal with at the moment, just because Ava has got kind of her home, like her dad is there to support her kind of thing. So she's got that strong like family support, which the others don't necessarily have. Yeah, Grayson, his parents just kind of leave him to do his own thing, which obviously has its own issues, but it's not like he's really kind of struggling to fit in or belong, I guess, in a way, because he's got that support of being the team captain and his coach and everything. So yeah, I think in that respect they find it easier, but it's not to say that they have got it easy, just yeah, the other two have kind of got some different issues, shall we say, to deal with.
The topic of Grayson, will we see the hockey side of his character become more impacting as the story goes on? On the topic of he's kind of questioning who he is in this book, in a sense, like he's like, am I attracted to men, or is it just Micah, or is it just this weird, like, I thought I was? Because that's not typically a trait we see in, hockey romance and these romances, a more alpha type character. So will we be seeing more of that dichotomy within the team and Grayson changing and kind of growing into his own skin?
Yeah, I think so. I think as he becomes more confident with his kind of this new side to him that he didn't know he had, we'll definitely see him changing and how that kind of affects the team. I mean, at the moment they're kind of behind him, but obviously they don't know kind of what's going on behind the scenes. So yeah, we'll get to see more about how that affects them all, and obviously the coach in particular.
And I'm trying to remember. We don't learn the identity of the hand that sets off everything, correct, in book one?
What?
What
Yeah,
hand? I was like,
yeah,
we're far enough in if I ask this. Someone's already listened this much, then. But with that being said, and anyone who looks at my review, it'll give it away because I literally think I have two like pictures of hands like sticking out of bodies. I saw them and was like, this is But with that being said, will we be feeling the pressure that gets piled onto these characters ramp up before one of them kind of hits their breaking point? Because I feel like a couple of them are approaching their breaking point at the end of this
Yeah.
book.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
they didn't report it, and some of it might just be that they have no clue what's going on and why someone's targeting them. But I was curious about that.
Yeah, well, definitely. The stakes are gonna go higher.
Yeah.
We are almost at an hour. I have a few about book 2, and I have a few more one-liners that I think you guys are going to get a kick out of. So I'll go through the one-liners first, and then
Okay.
that way if I'm not able to use the book 2 stuff, I can just cut it out at the end. But this one came from someone who read it, and they said, I had all my theories, and if in my head it was kind of like a murder board, and that's how they set it up. But they said, my theories were all wrong. And then they said, I have no clue what I'm about to dive into as I continue forward. And I just pictured it because I'm like, it's so deadpan. My theories are just all there was another one that found that I know who this one is, and I asked her if I could use it because I was like, I don't know if she wants me to use one of hers, but she is a big dark romance reader, and she was like, this is one of those Why Choose where you really want to like all 4 of them, but I just really couldn't ever fully love Ava yet. When I told her I was using it, she was like, but at least tell them this. And she was like, it's not because I don't like Eva. It's because I just know they're going to do something that makes me question everything I knew about Ava's story. Yeah, put that in the universe, but
Yeah.
it is. And I have a feeling she is waiting for the other shoe to drop after we ended book 1. She's like, I just something happened. The next one was like, I really just want to know Cruz's parents. And they have a second part, and I asked them as well if I could use it, and they said, I feel like his parents are more important to his story than we get, even though he hasn't, he doesn't have them at this point. And I was like, yeah, but I thought his parents were dead. That's how I read it at the whole time. I was like, I just assumed they're dead. Maybe they're not. Maybe they'll come like see the that's their. I was like, I thought they were dead. This one I found hilarious. It was Grayson's going to end up being the softest character. That is all. Questions. I was very curious how you guys would take that one because I kind of agree with some sides, and then some sides I'm like, I feel like his boiling point is approaching rapidly but slowly all
Yeah.
at once. This one ties to the 4. They said, I feel like Cruz and Zayd would get along, but Zayd would also just stare at him in silence and then just turn around and walk away.
He
I
would.
feel like that in his own series. And that's why we all loved him, because he was just kind of scary, but at the end of the
Yeah.
day was a great friend. This one ties into Boneyard Kings, and they said, how amazing would it be if the main female character in Boneyard Kings just comes in and just destroys every theory that I could think of. It's like, I feel like I don't want that because I have my own theories and I don't want to be way off base. Another person said, I feel like they did this and then waited to release book 2 in a way that's going to make me bite my nails down to my cuticles.
Yeah, maybe.
We're all very excited to this is about the title for book 2 because this first one is called Beneath the Surface, and they said the next book should be titled Above the Water because right now all we're learning about is everything that's occurring outside of this lake, and I don't want to go back up. Now, I feel like that one's the best one, so that one's where we're gonna end because I agree. I don't know if I want to dive into the depths of this lake without a Snuggie and some popcorn, or really, really bottle of wine. But so I will end on some questions for book 2, and like I said, if you guys can't answer, we can just kind of pass on to the next. But book 2, the title has not been released yet, correct?
No. I said no.
It hasn't come out. Do you guys have a release date in mind?
We do. Let me look. I always forget like a release date. It's in 2 months though, pretty much.
Have you?
We just Oh, we have the title. We had all the titles picked out before book 1 was.
Yeah, we know what the title.
Can we get any hints to when we're going to get the title?
I don't know.
Did
Let
we
me
say?
see. We just release date is we pushed it back. Was about 1 week?
I think it's March.
It's hold on. I have it right here. I don't have it right. It comes out on March 5th. There we go.
Okay.
It was coming out at the end of February, so we pushed it back by a week.
Will the third book release quicker than the gap between 1 and 2, or will it kind of be along the same, what was it, six-ish months, I think?
Was it 6 months? Damn,
I
it
don't
felt like
know.
2 months to me.
I don't
like
know.
five,
My time,
4.
Yeah, it will be quicker.
Yeah,
I was like,
that's the
might
part
have
of
been
yeah.
2 months for all I know. My time like speeds up and slows down in chunks. And I feel like there's so many things coming out between like January 1st and March 30th that I'm just
Yeah.
like, how I'm gonna read all these books.
So much.
So much stuff.
I think we can get away with this one. Will we be meeting any new characters that are gonna throw everything into a loop in book 2?
I think you should just keep an eye on the characters that have been mentioned.
We'll take that. So like you said, book 1 had the camera. When you release the cover for the second book, should we look for any hints or clues about the story and what we're going to be seeing in book 2?
Yeah, I think there's clues everywhere in the blurb. Everything is gonna have little Easter eggs.
I think my other 2, you guys won't be able to answer since we're 3 months out still from when you guys release book 2. But as we get closer, I might reach out and see if we can do like a little like promo post going into release to just kind of ramp up the hype. And I'll also like do teasers and clips from this because that's the perfect beauty of Riverside is that it clips for me.
Yeah.
Before we sign out, just wanted to thank you guys for, being great with the questions and kind of how you write the stories. I have 2 questions before we do sign out. And one of them is if there was any like story or book author that kind of made you want to dive into writing as your career.
I've always liked writing. I think poetry was my thing at first. Like I've always had journals filled with poetry. But as I get older, I got out of reading and stuff like that. And then I remember reading this one book, but the ending left me like with so many questions. And I was like, what was that? It was such a good book, but it just ended on like a massive cliffhanger. I was like, what? I was like, what's going on? And then from there, I kind of just picked up writing.
And then did you have anything, Becca, that kind of spurred you into wanting to be a writer?
There wasn't really any, there wasn't any one thing. I mean, I've always kind of written short stories and things, but I never knew I had like a novel length story of me. And then I did a writing challenge in 2018, I think it was. And I was like, okay, I've written 50,000 words, so I think I can write a whole novel. And then that was when I met Claudia online when we were writing our first book. Yeah, it just kind of went from there.
And this will be my last one. As we go into a period where you guys might be not quite involved in writing, but more like editing and going into getting book 2 ready for release, are there any books coming out or maybe recently released that you're excited to have the time to read or are planning to read when you do have a moment?
I have no idea what's going on. I'm like
I've got so many books on my Kindle that I need to read. But I still need to read I'm Flame.
Yeah.
That's my next one.
I feel the same. I have so many books, which mine will be done. I told Claudia before we hopped on, I have a really long flight coming up in a few days, so mine will be done there, or I might be writing reviews, or I might be editing, and I might just be like reading. Maybe I don't want to read on a plane. It'll just depend.
Yeah.
But Thank you guys for both agreeing to do this. I know we're all in different time zones, so it's kind of sometimes hard to kind of tack down a time between the UK and the Western Chicago time and the East Coast and everything. So thank you for being good sports when we scheduled it and for answering all these questions that both me and some of your readers have had. We're all very excited to get book 2 and to finally learn more about what's going on in Blackwell Lake. I am going to go ahead and pause the recording or stop the recording and then kind of let you guys know what's going to happen with posting and everything. That's okay.